Hi guys, Chad Trofkerman here. Welcome back, yet again, to the Steve and the Alien tutorial series. We are now starting on the final bits of animation, which focus in now in the inside of the vehicle, which will feature Steve. And so to begin, you will need to open up the scene that you drew for the inside of the vehicle. So that would include, of course, the driver's seat of the vehicle. And so once you have that open, please go to File, and Save As, and name this a different file and put that in your folder so that you have the design as well as now what we'll be creating, the animation. And once you've done that, we will need to now import in the Steve character. So go to File, Import, and then Animate Studio Object. And we will come out here and find the character, which it'll be right here. And once we bring him in, we will need to, of course, resize and reposition him. So I'll just take my scale layer tool and bring him down like this, move him up, and so on. Now, there'll probably be some trial and error here as far as where you need to position him. And you may also need to position, or reposition rather, the seat or the camera to get the best shot for this, because what we need to do is have this hand on the steering wheel. That's the big thing. And so I'll come in here, maybe even resize him a little bit more, bring him down like this. I'm not sure. Actually, that's a little bit too big. So let's try like this for right now and bring him up like that. And I will take the Manipulate Bone tool and see if he will reach the steering wheel. And it looks like he needs to come in a little bit more. So what I'll do is I'll just make him a little bit bigger. And then we'll try that. And that works better. So now we have his hand on the steering wheel. And we can bring this hand up. This hand will be controlling the hamburger that he'll be eating. So that looks like it's positioned pretty good. Of course, the seat is a little bit disproportionate. His head's a lot bigger than the actual head cushion, but I guess that's what happens when you draw your characters with huge vertical heads. So that will be about where we need to position him. And again, you may need to bring the seat forward. Maybe you'll have to bring it backwards. You'll have to resize him to get him right. It depends exactly how you drew out the scene, but you might need to move some things around. So just keep that in mind. So now, once you have done that, let's bring in the hamburger prop. We can do this by drawing out a hamburger ourselves, or if you want to save some time, we can bring in a pre-made prop that's already in the Anime Studio library. It's kind of similar to how we had the trees and such already available in the program. So what we can do with this is go to File, Import, Props, Food Props, Burger. You now have a burger brought in here, and we can resize it. Actually, I want to layer resize it so that the lines shrink with it. And there we go. And then we can bring the burger into the Steve layer so that he is positioned there. And I'll bring him right below the hand. So I'll just drag him in like that. And once I do that, I also need to, of course, resize the burger. Once I bring him into the layer like that. So now we have the layer here, and we might need to bring in the hand up past the head as well as the burger, because right now, as it stands, let me just grab the burger here. If we move it this way, it intersects with the face and we can't see it go above the face. Yet we need it below this hand so that it looks like he is holding it. So what we can do there is just take the burger, the hand, plus the entire arm, and we can move it above the head. So we can actually put it probably right on top of the whole layer list for the character. So now that is linked there. And we can, of course, let me hide actually the vehicle really quick so I can see his hand. To do this, I'll just hold an Alt and click the Steve layer. So now I will grab the burger and bring it down like this. Now when he brings it up, we don't want it to be upside down. So we can simply take the rotate layer tool and just go like that. And then bring it in just like this. Now we need to link the burger to his hand. So while we're on the burger layer, click on the bind layer tool and then choose his hand bone for that. So now when we click on the Steve layer and we use the manipulate bone tool, you can see now that we have the hamburger being animated and it's above his face. So we can bring it up to his mouth and he can eat and it'll be good. Okay, so now we need to, of course, animate all that out. So let's bring back the scenery. So we just hold an Alt and click on the Steve character to bring it back and go to frame 1. Now when we're on frame 1, we want to bring the hand to the steering wheel. And we'll bring the burger up about like this. And we'll also want to do some things with the switch layers. So we'll make sure that for our pupils, we can right click on the pupil switch layer. We want to make sure that those are turned on for the first frame. We'll also want to turn the mouth so that he is frowning or serious, because he's not going to be too happy at the moment. There is an alien, of course, chasing him and his friend. So that is where we can position that. And I noticed I had a glitch here, actually. When I brought my arms up, I forgot to bring my sleeve up with it. So I'll just click and drag that sleeve up so that it covers this arm right here. And that will work. Okay, so next we need to have a few frames of animation here where the character is driving the vehicle. So first, we'll, of course, be on frame 1 and click on the Steve bone layer and then select the Manipulate Bones tool. And we'll go in to about frame 12. And then we can move his hand down like that. And we'll go to about here and move it up like so. Okay. So we have that coming into play now. And we'll actually probably have this go on for the whole sequence. So I'll just bring it down like this, go up like that. And I'll keep doing this all the way to frame 96. Okay, there we go. So we have the hand looking like he is trying to control the steering wheel. Next, we need to animate out the hamburger eating portion. So we'll have him driving, and right about, let's say, frame 36, 37, we have him bring the hamburger up. So we can just click on the hand on frame 36 to insert that keyframe, and then we can bring it up to about frame 48. So it'll be like this. And then we'll now apply some switch layers to indicate that he is opening his mouth and chewing. So go right about here, and then at frame 48, we will right click on the mouth switch and choose the open mouth. Or I know we have a couple of different ones here, like we have this one as well, and that might be more appropriate actually since he's biting the hamburger. So let's go with that one. Or what you could do too is you could go back a couple frames prior to this now and have him open his mouth. So he opens his mouth and then he bites it. And that might actually work out the best. So I'll leave it like that, and then you can play with that if you wish. So he bites it, and then maybe a couple more frames in, we'll right click and choose the teeth portion of this. So now he's clenched his teeth shut. And at about this point now, we will probably pull the hamburger away, but we'll give it a couple of frames here so we can indicate the bite was there. So let's say at about frame 54 now, we can go back to our Steve bone layer and then click the hand. And then we can bring the hand down like this at about frame 66. So just to see how this all plays out, we just play it, and then he bites and puts it away. So after he bites, we're going to want him to chew. So he took a bite, and now at about frame 58, we just right-click on the mouth switch layer and choose the teeth grab instance. And then we go over a couple frames, and then go to teeth, go a few frames up, then back to this one, then back to this one, then maybe one more, then that. And then at frame 72, we'll go back then to the regular mouth. And we could even extend it out a little bit more because it goes pretty quick when he's doing the chewing animation. We could even maybe just prolong some of the frames here just by dragging them out a little bit. And we could even add a few more then in. So instead of having his mouth close at this point, we can just go back to the teeth grab motion, then the teeth, and then closed. That'll work. Okay. So we have all of that now animating out. Next, let's focus in on the hamburger because, as you can see, I mean, we have him bite the hamburger, but the hamburger doesn't indicate or doesn't have any changes that are being indicated on the stage. I would say the best way to do this is to create a switch layer. We will create a switch layer which will have the hamburger whole, and then we will create a hamburger that is bitten, and then we can switch it in and out whenever we wish. So let's go back now to frame 0 so we can put up this new hamburger. We just go over here to the layers panel and make a new layer and make it switch, and we'll name it burger. And then we can drag the whole burger into the layer. And we could then just rename this burger layer then to burger whole. Click OK. And we might need to do some minor adjusting here. If I just hide this stuff really quick, you'll see that the burger kind of went off his hand a little bit. So I'll just click on that switch layer and take my translate layer tool and just nudge it over like that. So now it's on the hand. And now let's duplicate the whole burger layer by just clicking on duplicate layer. And we can now name this burger burger bit or burger eaten or burger part, whichever indicates that you have a burger being eaten. So now if I zoom in here, for the burger half layer or the burger bit layer, we can take the translate points tool and just kind of come in here and do some adjustments to show that it was bit. So we can just kind of add some gaps here. And what we might need to do too is even add some points ourselves. So I can take the add point tool and just add some points here and there to give us some more points to work with when we're editing this object. And then just come back in here, go like that, and this. Okay, so if we look at the burger whole, it looks like that. Burger bit looks like that. I can probably do a couple more adjustments, like with the lettuce. Zoom in a little bit more here. And with the cheese, it's kind of, we can probably just scale that back now like that. You can probably get this little piece right there. Okay, burger whole, burger eaten. So that will work out. Come back up here now. We have the animation. First, actually, if you look, the burger isn't in his hand. That's because we need to assign this switch layer to the bone. We assigned the other burger to the bone, but now that it's in the switch layer, we need to do it again. So click on your switch layer and then choose the bind layer tool and then click on that hand bone again. So now we have the burger back like that. Now on frame 1, we of course want the burger to be whole. So we'll just right click on frame 1 and choose whole. And then where he's driving, and then he takes a bite right here, we'll then at that point want the burger to be bit. Then he brings it down like that. Now there's a couple of other things we could do with this. When he bites the burger, like here, we could adjust his arm slightly to indicate that the burger was moved down a little bit from the bite. So we can go back here to the Steve layer. And at about frame 48, we can just insert a keyframe on the hand and then bring the hand in a bit like this when it gets bitten. At least this, so there's some indication like that. And then we can even move the hand a little bit after that happens. And then it comes down like that. Just one more time. That looks pretty good. Okay. Now we have to adjust some eyes, of course. As you can see, I have the eye closed at one point when my switch layers started early for me. But that might be a good place for him to blink anyway. So at frame 24, let's go into the switch layer for the pupils and the eyes. And I will switch the pupils off. And I'll make sure that the eyes are set to closed. So he looks like he's standing there with his eyes open, and then he shuts them. And then at about frame 28, we can just right click on each of these switch layers and bring them back. So it looked like he blinked there. Now, I guess another thing we could do too is we can move his eyes down when he's going for the burger. And we could also make a slight head tilt to it as well, just to give off a little bit more believability here. So how about when his hand starts to go up at frame 37, we can click on his head with the Manipulate Bones tool to create a keyframe. And now at frame 47, we can just bring the head in just a little bit like that. So he's coming in, and he bites down. And maybe after he bites down, like right about when the burger starts to leave the mouth, we can create another keyframe by just clicking on his head, and then he can move the head back up at about 72 frames in like that. So he just kind of goes in, eats, and lifts up. Now we can also adjust the pupils for this. So going back now to frame 37, we have the burger coming in. So at about frame 47, actually. So we will go to the pupils switch and click the translate layer tool and click on the screen at frame 37 to create that keyframe. And then at 47, we can just move the pupils down like that. And then maybe at about frame 57, he can start to look back up. So we'll go to 72 and move his pupils back up to keep an eye on the road. Just like that. Now, at about this point, after he's done eating, I'll have him blink, and then when his eyes open up again, he can look over behind him, actually, to see what's going on behind him. And then that'll lead into the next shot when we see the UFO chasing the van. So, at about frame 84, we can right-click on the pupils switch layer and choose no pupils, and then click on the eyes switch and choose eyes closed. Going a little bit to about frame 88, and then choose the eyes to open as well as the pupils. And now before we move the pupils over, let's just go back one frame to frame 87 and just click with our translate layer tool on the pupil switch layer to create a keyframe, and then come here and then move them over like this. We do this because if we don't have a keyframe there, the eyes will start to move from the last keyframe, and they would be shifted at this point when we don't want them to be. So when he starts to look back like that too, right about here, we can take the Steve bone layer and the manipulate bones tool, and we can kind of tilt his head back like this, as if he's kind of looking back to see what's going on. Like that. Okay, so now let's bring back the environment. I'll just hold in my Alt key and click on the Steve eyeballs icon. We come back here, and we can kind of see some stuff going on here. He's eating, and then he kind of looks back. Okay, now the final thing we obviously need to do is bring in the animations for the background assets. So, starting at about frame 1, I'll just close up my Steve layer here, and then click on the ground and create a keyframe. And then we can just go all the way to the end of the animation, which I guess will be at about 120. So I'll actually type in 120 here for my end frame, just to make sure that the animation extends out that far. I can just zoom out here and move the ground like that. So we can see the ground is moving as he's driving. And we can switch that to linear movement, just like that. And we'll do the same for the mountains. So click on the mountain with your translate layer tool on the first frame. And actually, we can even move the mountains up like this, since we have more on this side. And then at about 120, we'll just move them over like this. The mountains will be moving slower than that of the ground because they are in the distance. And we can switch that to linear. And we'll do the same now for the other mountain range. At frame 1, with the translate layer tool, I'll just move these over like that. And then at 120, I will move the mountains in like this. Okay. And finally, I have a tree I brought in to this environment before we got started. And you can do the same if you wish. You can just go to File, Import, Props, Scenery, and you can grab a tree. You've done that before in our previous lessons. You can grab any other type of environment piece if you wish, or you can make your own. But we'll also just animate this tree flying by the screen. So let's say at about 2 seconds in, I will just click on that tree with the translate layer tool. And then let's say about frame 84, I'll just drag it out like this to have the tree pass by. Like that. And I'll choose, of course, linear for the movement. So it just passes by like that. And there we go. And also I forgot to change my mountain range, my second mountain range to a linear movement. So I'll just make sure I do that as well. Okay, so now we have the movement in the background and him eating and driving. Now finally, let's add in some camera movements, which will help simulate the fact that he is driving. We can make it look a little bit bumpy and all that kind of stuff. So starting at frame 1, we'll grab the track camera icon and then just click on the stage to create a keyframe. And then we can go into about, let's say, frame 14 and move the car down like this. And we can just move along, let's say to frame 30 and move it up, move it down. And we just can kind of go along like that and just add these movements into a shot. Like that. So we can play it out. I'll zoom in here before I play it out. And there we go. And some of these might be a little bit too drastic. I could probably make it a little bit smoother. But it doesn't look too bad. But you could go back in and tweak it if you wish, if you think that the camera movements are a little bit too jarring. But for the most part, I mean, he is a really bad driver. So I think it kind of adds to the fact that he doesn't know how to drive very well, especially when a UFO is chasing him. But that now concludes our animation for Steve in his car. At least that's the first animation. Since you now have all of this in play now, you've set up the scene, you set up Steve in the position of the vehicle that he's supposed to be, you got the hamburger and all that. The next shots that you need to do in the vehicle will actually be a lot easier since you've done most of the hard work for this shot. So now, once you're done, of course, as always, make sure you go to File and Save so you don't lose any of your hard work, and go to File, Export Animation, save your video settings and export the video out and view it. Make sure it looks good. If you needed to make adjustments, you can do that. And then once you have the video that you want, you can then store it in your folder for when we will begin the editing process. Anyway, that does it for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.